Hi, everyone. This is your host, Tommi Vincent, at In Her Words, a Tommi Vincent podcast. And today we have joining us at the table Ndidi Massay. And we are going to have a fabulous conversation for you all today. But before we get into our conversation, allow for me to share some highlights regarding Ndidi and her career. So, Ndidi currently is the Vice President of Workplace Culture and Diversity Initiatives for CBS Sports. Prior to joining CBS Sports, Ndidi had a consulting business providing diversity, equity, and inclusion and corporate social responsibility counsel services. Her professional experience includes CBS Sports, ABC News, ESPN, NFL, and the NCAA, and that is just to name a few, y'all. She served as the commissioner of the New York State Athletic Commission for 5 years. Additionally, and this is, I think, really apropos for this conversation because not only is Ndidi a professional in the sports world, she also is a former collegiate athlete, played softball at Northwestern, and is inducted into their Hall of Fame in 2009. Ndidi, welcome to the In Her Words table, and I'm delighted that you're going to stay a while with me today.
Thank you, Tommi, for having me. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. My very first question for you is, who is Ndidi?
Wow, that's a good question. All right, I got to think a second on that. I um, I would guess a few words come to mind. Unique, complex, um, apathetic. I think. Listen, my background, just from a child, honestly, so really helped shape who I am. I am of a mixed heritage. My father is black, my mother is white, but even more than that, I was born in Nigeria. So my father and everyone on my dad's side is Nigerian. My mother is American, yet her parents came over through Ellis Island from Croatia. So I will probably say that I'm maybe the only Nigerian Croatian mixture, at least that I know of. And I love both my heritages, and so that helps shape me, that I'm a little of this, I'm a little of that, and I don't really fit into a box. So
Mm-hmm.
there that's kind of my uniqueness, and I love it because I feel like I got the best of both worlds, that both my mother and my father, gave to me, and that's sort of how I approach life, and who I am is I don't want to be in a box. I want to create my own space, and I want to create spaces that are welcome, for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned, you yourself, you were a student athlete and also you were an assistant softball coach at Notre Dame. And your work is all about equity and inclusion and more than that, but that's some of the pillars of what you're doing. And you fully understand the rigor and commitment that goes into being a student athlete. What are your thoughts, if you have any, on NIL and how um, are there any concerns with the imbalance of the equity of that whole platform and the name, image, and likeness for student athletes?
Yeah, I think in theory, NIL is fantastic. I think that, why shouldn't someone own their own rights to their name, image, and likeness? And that's kind of the lawyer in me, Tommi. But and also the former athlete in me. Like, why not? Why not go out and exploit your own name and your own image and your own likeness, rather than others exploiting it without your say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the inequities is tough. It's always tough in sports. I mean, NIL aside, equities are tough in sports because we have the men's footballs and the men's basketballs of the world that are bringing in a lot more money than non-revenue sports, whether it be women or men. So I don't know the answer to that, to the imbalances there. I think kind of now it's the wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I don't think folks anticipated what was happening. There seems to be no rules, no governance out there. So I think it'll probably work itself into where it should be, hopefully. I think now the really good thing, at least in my opinion, and what I see happening is that the athletes sort of claiming their power. Listen, they have
Mm-hmm.
power. They have power. We see it in professional sports. Why not in college sports? I remember way back, and this is in professionally, I was a part of this sort of the aftermath is with the University of Missouri's football program when they threatened to boycott a bowl game. Gosh, I think that was well over 10 years ago, sort of at the tip of this. And and they did not end up boycotting. They ended up getting their demands, but that just showed that collectively a group of people coming together has power. And this day and age in sports, I mean, sports is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, and billions of dollars are flowing in this industry. So the athletes, I think, at all levels have power. And I love that they're using it and they're sort of claiming it. But I do think it's the wild, wild west right now.
Yeah, I think about it often. We have a son who, well, both of our sons had experience playing college football. And you mentioned, how the football and basketball programs tend to bring in more resources for the universities. And I 100% get that. And at the same time, there's a rigor and a commitment that every student athlete is bringing to the table. It literally becomes a full time job in addition to you showing up and being a good student and, contributing positively to the university or college that you're attending. And also at in the football and basketball programs, there's still tends to be, just like at the professional level, where there are certain positions that are reaping the benefits of an NIL. And when you're grown and you're professional and you're negotiating contracts and salaries, okay, that's one thing. But where you're in college and everyone is coming out of high school, I'm concerned at how this can show up from the perspective of the morale in the locker room, knowing that the QB or the running back or the wide receiver is receiving millions of dollars to attend a university, and there's a whole offensive line that is responsible for really making sure and providing the opportunity for those positions to excel and do well on offense, and then being a complete oversight of the defensive side of the ball. So I'm concerned about that because these are young student athletes who have not matured and who don't know how to manage that. So I 100% believe that it's important for them to own their name, image, and likeness. But because it's the wild, wild west, I'm concerned that people aren't taking into account the necessary counsel and development of the student athlete so that this does not harm them in the process and the morale and the individuals of every individual on that team that makes the entire team. So I have some serious concerns just watching it play out. I mean, and who am I? I can't change it or anything like that, but I do recognize the impact that it has. And I've experienced some of the conversations with some of the young men on my son's team where it's impacting them, and it's already hard. Like, it is already hard, especially in big programs. So I have some concerns.
Yeah, I do too. And I look at the women as well. And again, the non-revenue
Mm-hmm.
sports and the men. You look at women and you think about Title IX. Where does Title IX fit in all this, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when I was a woman, when I played softball at Northwestern, the biggest program was football. And our football team was not good. And they are not good right now. Um, they aren't. They won one game all year. It was a little disappointing. I think when the last time I was there, they won one game as well. They'll get back. I love Coach Fitz. He's a friend of mine. They'll get back. But, like anything, up and down. But when I was there, at one point we were ranked number 2 in the country, and our football team won one game. And the men on the football team still got more than the women on the softball team. And we were
Mm-hmm.
literally ranked number 2 in the country. Um, and we worked just as hard as they did, if not harder. I mean, who knows? I'm not in their practices every day, but there was a fight. Not a fight, but an internal fight. Is like, I want equity. I I want what they have. I want the locker rooms. I want the gear. I want the swag. I want the hotels. I want
Mm-hmm.
the steak dinners. And I gotta say, Northwestern was very good. One of the reasons why I went there is because they do treat their women in men's non-revenue sports very well. I would say as close as it could be to a football player, etc. I mean, so when I focus on equity and not equality, because clearly a men's football team needs little different things than a women's softball team needs. Um, but I hope, I know every university doesn't do that. And then I have no idea, again, with NIL, sort of where Title IX and where all that comes in, if at all. But I do know there are definitely some women capitalizing on this too. And I say good for them, go out and get theirs. My niece is a gymnast, and she has some small NIL deals, and she's thrilled with it. But they're nothing compared to some of her colleagues who are on the football team. And then I have a son who plays high school football, and I will tell you what, now there are a bunch of states who have passed laws to say that high school kids can get NIL. So if you have these high school kids that are my son happened to play at a major football program where there's 5-star recruits, they're already talking NIL deals at 16, 17, 18 years old. So that even
Yeah.
concerns me more, right, than the gentleman in college. There's, it is tough. It is tough. And again, as a lawyer, I would say too that I'm worried about these contracts, and I'm worried that these young people are signing deals without getting proper advice from a lawyer, and they don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yes. And that's real because say if someone signs a contract for they're looking at the numbers and it's a 10-year contract, something crazy where they're locked into, and then they have the opportunity to become a professional and their value exceeds that at that level, and but they're locked into these opportunities. So there's a lot of issues on the table that I'm hoping that people are being thoughtful about. That's all I'm saying. I am 100%. I celebrate the student athletes that are having these opportunities because I know what it takes, and I know the commitment that families put into getting scholarships to attend universities. Um, I just want to make sure that it's being thoughtfully done and not just kind of like throwing it out there and allowing it to course correct. I think that there's too much at stake just to allow time to run its course and for it to do a lot of damage in the process, because sometimes damage is so severe that you cannot, rebound from it.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
So, in your current position at CBS, one of your responsibilities is to develop initiatives for a more diverse and inclusive workplace. Can you talk about the benefits of intentionally creating diverse and inclusive workspaces? And I'm asking this question because sometimes people hear about this work and they're like, well, why can't we just do it how it was? Or they may think like by being intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that somehow that's providing an advantage versus looking at it from the perspective that it's all about being fair across the board.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to be intentional or nothing's going to change, and right now, if you just look at sports, well, listen, we could look at CBS sports, but if you look at sports in general, just the numbers of women and people of color are very low, right? In terms of they don't represent the population of our country. That's sort of when I look at measurements. That's what I'd like to measure. I'd like to keep up with really the census, and and I think that it won't. I mean, you just used a word for NIL. I'm talking about course correcting or self correcting. In this world, nothing will be corrected by itself without somebody or systems being intentional to reach out to more people of color and more women, and then once they're sort of in, we can talk about diversity, we talk about numbers, but then once they're in, it's about belonging and inclusion and investing in people and growing people and promoting people, et cetera, and putting people in positions to succeed, with all the resources around it. So listen, I think that I know for, at least we at CBS Sports and Paramount Global, as well as most companies, are invested in this and understand the importance of this. Unfortunately, I think it took the murder of George Floyd and people sort of demanding this, for us to take these next steps. But then, I look at inclusion, I look at diversity as well, beyond that, beyond color, beyond ethnicity, beyond gender, and look at generational diversity, right? You look at the divide with those coming out of college versus those who are in their 50s and 60s, and people just think differently. So when you just generally think about diversity, and you think about those at the table, that there is data and research that shows that diverse teams perform better, period. They generate more revenue, they are more efficient, they're better problem solvers. I mean, there are Harvard Business Review documents that show this. There's consulting companies, et cetera, all over there who have done this research, and the data is out there. So it's better business, as well as the right thing to do. It's better business for all of us. But for those who sort of are, and like you were saying, who think, well, why are we doing this? And we're giving other people the edge. I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman not too long ago, and he's sort of a white gentleman, and he sort of said that to me. And what I told him is, welcome to my world, dude. I was like, you don't think you're getting an advantage? Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world every single day, right? So now, just in theory, you think you are sitting at the back of the bus. In theory, not in a real situation. And you are having a challenge with that. And I mean, Tommy, you and I deal with it every day in our lives, whether it's personal or professional, whether it's going to the store, whether it's driving a car. So I think there's some positives there that when I said, welcome to my world, he sort of paused. And I said, yeah, how does it feel? How does it feel? Because this is what we deal with all the time. And then once you go home and leave work in this, theoretical conversation we're having, it goes away. You're a white man with certain privileges of being a white man. And so I thought it was a very constructive conversation, and he thanked me, and he was like, okay, I'm starting to see this. And I don't know, I think, like you said, the word fair, and I think fair is a word we all strive for, and fair and equity, again, is not equality. Some people need a head start. I love honestly, so my sons normally play baseball or lacrosse in the spring, and my youngest one is now playing track and field, and he's running. And I love just the idea of when you're doing 100 or I'm not 100, but like a 400, and when you line up around the track at different starting points. And I think about it as a young person seeing that for the very first time, you're like, that's not fair. These people get a head start. These people are farther behind. And then clearly you see why it's done, because you see, the curves, and that and I'm like, that's equity at its best. And that you can see it visually, is that in order to be fair, people have to start at different places because just of the arc of the circle. So I tend to think about that when I tend to try to show people visually equity, and that, and listen, you have more than one child. With more than one child, like, do you treat your children equally? Like, I would hope not, right? Because your children they need different things. And from, maybe a young person is like, that's not fair. He gets this and she gets this, but they need that, right? You don't. So I think equity and fairness it's hard. But I think that's what we should strive for.
That track illustration is a great visual, because you're absolutely right. You can see in that why you can literally see the significance and the importance of, to make it fair in the race, you have to do this, because if they all lined up in the same space, you already know that certain lanes, they're just at a disadvantage from the start. Yeah
100%.
That's good. So early on in your career, you started out as a sports and an entertainment lawyer, and there's some lessons as you're going through or experiences that you encounter early on that you're like, you can look back and you're like, man, I was really naive in that situation. And then as you mature, you become more mature as a professional, you look at that and you recognize, I could have handled it this way. Can you share with us an experience and a lesson that you learned that would impart some wisdom into people listening, where I did this early on and it was as a result of me being naive? But now that I'm mature, more mature as a professional, this is how I could have handled it.
Yeah, there's so many lessons that I've learned. I probably think the most naive I've been is I'm very honest, and at least honest in my own perception, right? What I think is I have a lot of integrity, and almost being too honest where it was detrimental, and almost being too honest with clients who could have shaped things better, and I could have learned how to play the game better,
Mm-hmm.
without, not by being dishonest, but for instance, I'll just say, for instance, I tried the agent thing for a while and represented athletes. I ended up really not enjoying that at all. And then I represented some college and professional coaches as well. I enjoyed that much better, probably just because they were, older and more mature. Because again, the athletes you're dealing with, mid 20-year-olds
Mm-hmm.
who, who see life very differently. But yeah, I think I would have tried to understand the politics and understand the game before I sort of made my moves. And this is what I tell young people today is understand the game, because it's all a game, right? Understand your culture, and they're all different. And that it takes a while to understand it, and don't just jump in and we need to do this and we need to do this because this is right. And especially lawyers tend to do that. This is the law, this is how it's supposed to do, it's black and white. And what I would say is I like to play a little bit more in the gray area, and I like
Mm-hmm.
to I mean, quite honestly, I like to change systems. And the only way you do that is you got to go into the gray area a little bit. You got to get outside of the box. You got to, I always tell people when they say, we've, why are we doing it this way? Because we've always done it this way. And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, or the most efficient way to do it, or the right way to do it. Like, let's try something a little different and see what happens here. And people are so resistant to change that it normally backs people up, and they freak out a little bit, like, whoa, well, why have we done this for 10 years? And I'm like, well, this is why we need sort of fresh eyes and fresh ideas in here, because it's good to switch things up and do things a little different. So I guess, back to your original question, I would say I would sit back a little bit more and understand the game and understand the politics, to really watch those at the top, those who succeeded, and how they got there, how they maneuvered sort of
Mm-hmm.
through the maze, and learn from that. And then equally those who may have not succeeded and what they're doing wrong and why it's not working. Um, so that's what I would do. I guess, think of it more like a chess game, and be a little bit more patient in terms before I made my moves. In terms of, right, understanding the game and building in buy-in and building in my equity in the game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's I think my biggest advice. It's what I tell my sons all the time in life. I'm like, whether it's a class, like, you got to figure out what the professor
Mm-hmm.
wants, right? And
Mm-hmm.
each one of them is different, and some of them may just want you to regurgitate what you learned, facts. Some of them want complete sentences, flowery sentences, intros out, and some might want just bullet points. But like, you got to figure it out, and then you got to deliver if you want to do well. um And then, I have a son right now who's graduating actually from Northwestern as well, and he's looking to get a job in sports, and it's the same thing. I've told him, I'm like, it's a little different in sports. It's not, you're not going on Wall Street. Like, what's the game? How do you get in? There's a
Yeah.
way to get in, and there's a way many people don't get in. So I've told him, like, learn, talk to people, ask them how they got in, learn the game, and then figure out whether you want to play or not. Um, and again, my analogy to sport as well is right. Learn the game and learn the politics, and then learn where you want to be in that game.
Yeah.
Do you want to be the team captain? Do you want to lead the team in batting average and hits, or are you okay just contributing? Because I think both are okay, but you got to
Hmm.
figure out where you want to be, and then you got to figure out what you need to do to get there.
Hmm. Sage advice from Mama. Who's played the game now, you know what I'm saying. So you're not just sharing what you heard, you're sharing what you know in this whole process of navigating the wide world of sports, because every, like you said, every it's different. Work cultures are different, even though it's in the same genre. It's still different.
It is.
So that's really,
It's funny,
yeah.
Tommy. If I was going to say, I was giving my son some advice, my high school son on his football team, and he looked at me and he was like, "You've never played football a day in your life." Actually, I have. I have played flag, but what I've told him is sort of to your point. I'm like, "Oh, trust me, I've played sport at a high level. I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on here, and I know exactly what we collectively as a family, you and me as your mother slash coach, what we need to do for you to succeed here."
Mm-hmm.
And same sort of thing is it's understand what your coaches need. Go to your coaches, what do I need to get more playing time? How do I work harder? All of that stuff, because told them it's not necessarily working harder, it's working smarter. And the
Yeah.
only way to work smarter is to figure out the game, to figure out what is needed at the back end, and then move forward in that direction. So, hopefully I'm teaching them a few things here and there.
So your work, your body of work has impacted the world of sports, far and wide, with all the work that you're doing. What is your hope that what people will say about you and your impact in the world of sports?
I hope they call me a game changer,
Mm.
and that I am not just helping a few individuals here and there, but I'm literally changing the game and changing the rules and changing systems, because then it's lasting once I leave. I mean, I'm one person. I hope I'm making a change. I people say I'm making a change. When I hear some of my colleagues and I hear their thoughts, um, like, it makes me smile, because I'm like, you're thinking differently. You're thinking differently
Mm.
because I'm constantly challenging you to think differently. Um, and that's success. But I think more than that, it's systems and how we look at the game and the rules of engagement. I think that has to change in order for it to last. Um, so yes, I think game changer and system changer, and I mean, so far so good. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I could always do more. We can always do more, but I think we're making progress at CBS Sports. I'm happy with the progress. So my role is new. It's 2 years in. I mean, they've never had a full-time person do this. And it sort of goes back to how we kicked off our conversation and talked about intention. The fact that we have somebody full-time looking at DE&I, is huge. And I think the way I was positioned in the organization also is huge. I report directly to our chairman, Sean McManus,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that shows the importance of the role. And it also, so my job is to have a D&I lens on every single part of our business. So yes, content, because we are content providers, but also finances, marketing, communications, HR, how we recruit people, how we retain people, culture. So everything that we do we have a D&I lens, and we have a full-time person doing it. So I think that in and of itself is huge, and huge for CBS Sports, and huge for how this role was positioned, I think, for success.
Hmm. So, speaking of game changers, let me just call this out. So, you were recently recognized as a game changer by Sports Business Journal. So, they're already saying that about you in the space, anyhow. So, I just wanted to call that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's a great honor. It really was. Definitely.
So let's move to our next segment, and that is I'm bringing her to the table with me. And this is your opportunity to give another woman her flowers, for you know that your career would not be where it is today without her fingerprint on your journey.
So can I do two? I hope I can do two.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first one is Wendy Lewis. So I don't know if you know Wendy. Wendy is now retired, but Wendy worked for Major League Baseball. She started out with the Cubs, and she worked for Major League Baseball. And she really has been a great mentor to me, as well as a role model. I met Wendy. I knew I wanted to come and get into sports. While I was in law school, I met Wendy, and I was shaking hands, just trying to get my opportunity in sports. And at that point, Wendy was working for the Chicago Bears. She was a single mom with 3 children and getting her MBA at Kellogg at night. And that
Mm.
alone, just in a black woman, just blew me away. I was like, whoa, wait, you work full time for the Cubs, you got kids, you're a single mom, and you're in Kellogg, in the top business schools in the country. And she was so passionate about the DEI space. I mean, this is before DEI was a thing, right? And she was always, fighting the fight, and just representing and holding it down, and was so generous with me, with her time and effort and energy. And we stayed in touch throughout the years. She eventually moved on and moved to New York, and worked for Major League Baseball. And she started like their whole diverse supplier program from scratch, and
Mm-hmm.
was the first person that I know of who started a program like this, and just took it to levels that to me is still mind blowing. I think the numbers now at Major League Baseball are like $2 billion are
Mm.
spent in with women and BIPOC owned small companies, with teams in the league, and what she did. And I just saw her, and obviously she shared with me, but just so inspirational. I just saw her grow this out of nothing. I saw her literally go from team to team to team to convince the owners
Mm-hmm.
and the teams that this was the right thing to do. And that her idea was that the DEI is really pushed when you put money into the communities. And then
Mm-hmm.
it just is a gift that keeps giving, right? Because then their kids are going to college, and they see mom and dad having a successful business, etc. Um, so to think about, again, close, I think, you don't quote me on the numbers, but around $2 billion into these communities is amazing. So she's been a huge inspiration to me. And then I would say my second set of flowers is, so I'm going with someone older, is someone current. Um, and that is Katrina Adams. And I don't know if you know Katrina. She works in tennis. So she was the former chair of the United States Tennis Association board, as well as president. And so she is my age. We met at Northwestern. We literally, our freshman year in the dorms, we lived next door to each other. And it's crazy when you think about that, when you think you're young 18-year-old kids, in
Yeah.
college. She was playing tennis, I was playing softball. We connected, and we're still in touch. My kids call her auntie. And to be a part of her career, from that stage to being the youngest chair of the board in tennis, the first black woman, the first former professional tennis player. She's done a lot. She's done a lot to change tennis. And she is in these rooms with, the Oprah Winfrey's of the world. It's kind of crazy, right? She's at the French Open, the US Open, the
Yeah.
Australian Open. Um, and the highest level of tennis, really from a corporate side, was really, really close to Venus and Serena. and a lot of the young Black women that really changed the face of tennis in our country. So, and she's my constant. She's my go-to, where we can exchange stories. We can support one another. She's here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I get to see her now and then, especially we get to see each other going back to Northwestern. But again, just because she's my age and we sort of came up together, so proud of her and just inspired by her daily,
Mm-hmm.
literally daily, on what she does and how she's made change in tennis. And right now she's a member. So there's a term, right, to be on the chair for the board at USTA. It's a 2-year term, and she's the first one who they extended her term to 4 years.
Wow.
She wrote a book. She just blows me away. And now she's still a board member. She's not the chair, but she's also now a board member of the global, I'm not sure exactly the name of it, but the Global Tennis Association. So hence the French Open, the Australian Open, all of that. She travels the world, and again, it's just proud of what she's done, and at such a young age, and really, she is truly a game changer. So those are my
Mm-hmm.
two women.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love how you brought someone, a more mature woman, and then you brought a peer to the table with you, because we're so much stronger together, and our experiences, when we're able to share them and to experience them together, it really does allow us to go further together. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you to them.
So, this is our final segment, and I'm going to ask you one of the questions from Food is Love. And I'm a chef. And well, one of the things that I do is I'm a chef. And so I like to incorporate this piece into our conversation, because I know the impact and the power of bringing people to the family, to the table, especially our families and our friends, where we have an opportunity to do a pulse check and to just really check in with each other and make sure we're okay. So, my question for you is this: you talked about how you've come from two really rich cultures. Does your family have an heirloom recipe that is passed down from generation to generation?
So I will tell you, unfortunately, no. I will tell you, I, I will tell you, and I love my mama, but my mom cannot cook. So, and she will tell you that too. She will order out. But that said, and my father, yeah, didn't cook either. But that said, um, I do have a recipe that my cousins, that is still his family, that my
Mm-hmm.
cousins sort of use whenever they come visit me. So these are my cousins from Nigeria. And so it's definitely food that I eat when I go to Nigeria, and it's a curry dish. So essentially, an Indian curry, but is very much Nigerian customized, I guess.
Yeah.
So the Nigerian version of curry, and it is the best thing I've ever had. I would eat it every day if I could. So it's they whenever my cousins come to visit, they love to cook, and so I sit there in the kitchen, probably, like you were saying, how food brings us together, which I normally sit with a glass of wine and watch them. But I hope cut some things up. And it's curry, but with a little twist, and it's got we use chicken, and we use veggies, and we use coconut milk, and a lot of onions, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
spices, and we kind of use like what's in the fridge. So we kind of just throw in different veggies and stuff to try to make it a little healthy. And the one interesting thing that my cousins and I go back and forth on is, do we keep the bone in, bone chicken with bones? And they're like, you
Yeah.
Americans just get the chicken breasts, but you got to keep the bone in because the bone makes it more flavorful.
Yes.
So
Uh huh.
right, so now I do a combination. I have some bone in, some without bone. Um, but curry. We eat it a lot we eat it a lot in Nigeria. We just put it over rice, and it's the one meal because again we throw veggies and stuff in it, so it's the one thing with no sides. It is the meal is chicken curry, and they always have to bring the spice down for me because I can't do what they do in Africa. I've become a little Americanized with the spice, so I got to make it more mild.
Yes, yes. It sounds amazing. And it's also if it's so curry is has so many warm spices, so that has to envelop you like and this just feels warm and cozy. So that sounds amazing. But indeed, I'm so grateful that you joined me today at the In Her Words table. How can people find you?
Oh, well, I guess I'm on Twitter. It's just at Ndidi Massay. And let's see, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm not so good on social media, y'all. So just letting you know that. But LinkedIn, actually, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. It's just, it's just my name, Ndidi, Ndidi, and my last name, Massay, Massay. So would love to, hear from anyone and continue the conversation, continue the dialogue. Thank you for having me, Tommy. It was really fun.
Thank you.